So you're playing Withering Waves, you do a 10 pull or a single pull if you're lucky, unlike me, and you get 5-star Augusta. Now, what do you get with Augusta besides WuWa's kind of first true hyper carry? Well, Augusta is a broadsword wielding electro user who produces red lightning of all things. In this video, we're going to look at how Augusta works. Now, Augusta is a character that has a ton of forte gauges. There's a lot kind of going on right above her HP bar. So hopefully I will be able to explain that to you in a way that makes sense and doesn't confuse you. Now, Augusta has 3 forte gauges. Now, to differentiate between all 3 of these, we're gonna have the purple ones, which are gonna be the top, the circle gauge, which is gonna be the one in the middle, and then we're gonna have the sword gauges at the very, very bottom. That's what we're gonna call all of these. We're not gonna use their real names. Now, first we have to build up the purple gauges, the very, very top ones, and you have multiple ways of building that up. First, you're gonna have normal attacks. Then you're gonna be able to also use your skill, and you're going to be able to use a version of the burst. This is going to be whenever the burst is as circled in purple that you get from energy, right? It's not going to be her actual burst. This is just going to be a way to get up the purple forte gauge. Once you have the full purple, both of them charged, you need to do a heavy attack. You're going to notice that our icons are going to change, where it's going to be kind of telling us to do a heavy attack. Hold down our attack, do a heavy attack to convert it into a piece of the circle gauge. So we need to do our burst, our skill, our auto attacks, normal attacks to fill up the purple gauges, heavy attack to turn it into a piece of the circle gauge. And we need to completely fill the circle gauge up. It's not as hard as it seems. It doesn't take as long as you think it might take, okay? Because you can use like a skill and some normal attacks, convert it over. Use the burst, convert it over. Use some normal attacks, convert it over. Skill, convert it over, right? Like you can weave it all kind of together to get the circle gauge filled relatively fast. It's not as bad as you may think. Once the circle gauge is filled, our skill is going to change. If we then use the skill, it is going to summon the griffin. We're going to go up into the air. Augusta has to go into the air. You don't have to knock up the enemy, but if the enemy is like crouched down, like you've broken its shield, it's kind of laying down, it's much harder to get up into the air. You're gonna notice that the skill icon is gonna change again. When you hit it, Augusta is going to kind of do like an energy ball, right? That's just what we're gonna call it. It's gonna like radiate energy out, dealing damage. That is going to convert the circle gauge into the sword gauge. Now we have one of the sword gauges filled. Now, I know, it seems like a lot. We have to fill the sword gauge 2 times. We have to get both of them filled. You can do everything that we talked about to get the second sword gauge filled, or you can use her passive or her outro skill. So her first passive is actually going to be where if you haven't been in combat for at least 4 seconds, it will give you one of the sword gauges, right? Now, this does not mean that you can just swap Augusta off for 4 seconds. It means that your entire team is out of combat for at least 4 seconds. So whenever you go into a fight, you should be able to start it with one of the sword gauges full. Now, her outro skill is really interesting because it discourages you from quick swapping, right? That's why I said at the beginning that she's our first hyper carry, because you can't quick swap the same way that you can in other teams. Because what you have to do is you have to build up her outro skill gauge, right? Which we all know how to do. You outro skill into somebody else, in this case, Shorekeeper. If we go through Shorekeeper's kit, build up her outro skill gauge, then we go back into Augusta, it will automatically give her one of the sword gauges. So we have to outro skill out of Augusta into somebody else, build up their outro skill gauge, and then outro/intro skill back into Augusta, or Yinlin, build up Yinlins, and then go into Augusta, right? We have to go out of Augusta with an outro skill and into Augusta with an outro skill, right? So you can go into Shorekeeper, do Shorekeeper's kit, go into Yinlin, do Yinlin's kit, then go back into Augusta and still get it. It doesn't have to go from Augusta to Shorekeeper back to Augusta. You can do kind of the rest of your rotation. Anyway, outro skill out, do stuff, outro, intro skill back into Augusta, and that will give you one of the sword gauges. So we can build one up using the skill, the ult, the auto attacks, normal attacks, heavy attacks, convert it into the ring, do all that kind of stuff, special skill, right? We can do all of that stuff. And then get one of the sword gauges from that, and then one of the sword gauges either from just entering combat after 4 seconds of no combat, or doing the outro intro skill. Now that we have 2 of the sword gauges full, again, I know it seems like a lot, but as you can see, me running through it, it's not taking that much time, right? Once you kind of figure out when and where to do certain things and outroing and introing in, it's not that bad, I promise. Once we have 2 of the sword gauges full, then we can do her special ult that we all saw that stops time. You have to hold down R. If you tap it, it won't do anything. You have to hold it down. When you hold it down, she will enter the first phase of her ult, where she stops time, and then you can just auto, like normal attack, basic attack, basic attack, basic attack. I know I've said like 4 different words for that, but you're doing your basic attacks. It's going to fill up the gauge at the bottom, which doesn't matter, just basic attack until it's full. Then you're going to do the second phase of her big ult, where she is going to kind of slide back, dealing this insane amount of electro AoE damage onto the enemies, right? That's where we get that kind of, that's where we get that second part of the ult. So again, to recap, fill up the purple gauges, heavy attack. Fill up the circle gauge, special skill, into the air, special skill again. That will go into a sword gauge. You can either do that again, or you can outro/intro skill into somebody else, outro/intro skill back into Augusta, get the second gauge, hold down R, of course using your echo and all that kind of stuff too, hold down R to then do the special 2-phase ult that stops time. That is her really, really cool animation. So I hope that I explained that well. Again, it's a lot. Once you figure it out, it's not too bad. Now for echoes. In this, I was actually running Void Thunder. I kind of just took Yinlin's set and then the Culturo set over to Yinlin because I don't have the area unlocked to get her actual best echo set, which is going to be Crown of Valor. Now here's the thing with Crown of Valor. You're actually going to be running a 3-piece Crown of Valor, 2-piece Void Thunder, because Crown of Valor only needs 3 pieces to get the full effect. And the effect is that upon getting a shield, which she does get through one of her passives, when she does damage, so you'll be able to trigger this consistently, you'll get an attack buff and a crit damage buff up to 5 stacks, being a 30% attack buff and a 20% crit damage buff. And then of course, this echo being the full sovereign is going to be very, very good because the effect is that the resonator with this echo equipped in the main slot gains electro bonus and heavy attack damage bonus, which is great because that's what all of her damage is heavy damage. And then of course, we're gonna have the 2-piece Void Thunder, which is gonna give us electro damage. And you can kind of make whatever your best echoes are can be the 3-piece and the 2-piece, right? You don't have to have like all of your 3 costs and your main echo be Crown Valor. No, pick your best ones and then you can kind of mix and match to get the 3 and the 2. Now, for weapons, of course, her Thunder Flare Dominion is going to be her best in slot. It is her signature after all. It's going to get a little bit of crit rate, and then upon casting your Resonant skill or your intro skill, it is going to give you a heavy attack damage bonus, which again is what she does. And then when you obtain a shield, it is going to ignore a piece of the enemy's defense, stacking again up to 5 times. So you can ignore a ton of defense through this kind of kit, right, through her passive. So this is a really, really good option for her, but you don't have to use this one. Both Battle Pass options are going to be good if you do have the Battle Pass. However, the newer one is actually going to be better for her because it's going to give crit damage and then it's going to also give you an attack buff and a heavy damage buff upon casting your Resonance Liberation, your burst. So this is going to be a really, really good option if you do not have her signature weapon and you need a better weapon for her. You can also use something like Helios Cleaver. This is going to be a 4-star. It's going to give you an attack buff, and then within 12 seconds after using your skill, it's going to also give you an attack buff. It is going to have a stacking mechanic with it, right? Of course, her signature or this new Battle Pass weapon are going to be her 2 better ones, but you can, of course, use some 4-stars and just kind of get attack up and then invest more into crit rate on the echoes. So again, because of the way that her outro intro skill works, where you need to outro skill out of her into somebody else and do their entire kit to then outro skill in intro skill into Augusta, it starts to discourage quick swap, because if you outro skill into Shorekeeper and don't finish Shorekeeper's full outro skill gauge and then go back into Augusta, you have lost one of the sword gauges. Like, you don't get it back up, right? Which is where all of her damage comes from. So it is trying to discourage having a quick swap team and more encourage a hyper carry team. So whenever I said that this is our first character that is hyper carry focused, her kit incentivizes you to not quick swap, which is a very, very interesting thing. So I'm interested to see kind of how we go through if we're going to have quick swap viable teams and hyper carry teams, and kind of how the game is going to progress as we go to more and more nations, more and more areas, if they're going to do something else to kind of incentivize us to not do quick swap and do some other things, right? So I'm really curious to see kind of where everything goes. Now that's going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure you comment, like, subscribe. Shorekeeper has blue and white hair. I have white hair, and I'll see you in the next one.